afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Having warned that the session after lunch and on the last day of the summit is often the toughest. So thank you for showing up. I know that many of us are itching to go home, but I promise that this is going to be one of the most impactful sessions you've attended at the summit. My name is Toyosi Ogunsheye. I am the CEO and President of the Presidential Precinct. The Presidential Precinct is a consortium of the University of Virginia, College of William and Mary, Montpelier, Monticello and Ireland. So Montpelier, Monticello and Ireland are the homes of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. 10 years ago, these 5 organizations came together and birthed the precinct. So what do? Together with the State Department, we invest in the development of international leaders. And how do we do this? We seek to draw out the best of them through professional programs, leadership exchanges, global forums, virtual resources, and we've done that back to back for a decade. Over 1,400 leaders from 170 countries have come to the Presidential Precinct, and they've returned home to invest their knowledge, expertise, and networks to transform the lives of millions of people in their countries. At the beginning of this year, when John Olajide, the CEO of Axxess and chair of the Corporate Council in Africa, was working on this summit. By the way, John Olajide sits on the board of the Presidential Precinct. It was of the conviction that we cannot convene a U.S. Africa Summit and we do not have examples of successful businesses on the African continent at the summit. For 3 days, we've heard about how the continent is full of talent. The continent is full of resources. Its people are resilient. Its people are hardworking. But who are these people? What do they do? How do they do it? But more importantly, if you're in this room and you're thinking about how do I invest on the continent, what do I need to know? And you want to hear this from the people, men, women, who are doing the walk and talking the talk, then you are in the right place. At this point, permit me to introduce members of the panel. Now, there are going to be 4 members of the panel on stage, but this is part of a 12-man and woman quad. I said earlier that John was of the conviction that we cannot do a U.S. Africa Business Summit and not have examples of successful entrepreneurs here. So he said to me, we need to convene them at the summit. And that birthed the Corporate Leaders Program at the Presidential Precinct. It's a quad of 15 successful entrepreneurs on the African continent. Out of the 15, 12 of them are in this room today, and 4 of them are going to be joining me on stage. And basically, what are we doing this evening? We're celebrating entrepreneurial success. We're telling the story of inspiration and how these young Africans were able to turn nothing to something big that is adding value in their community, where they're employing millions of people and adding to the revenue of their countries. At this stage, I'd like to invite the very first person, who I'm extremely proud of, India Magadagela from South Africa. Let me tell you something about her. She owns Eva Electric, and it is the first South African business to package leading international electric vehicles, charging infrastructure, and innovative financial solutions that remove the hurdles to adopting a cleaner and more efficient future. And she's going to tell us how she built that business. Second to join me on the panel is Olawumi Ilesami. Olawumi Ilesami is the CEO of 3LC Innovate Energy in Nigeria. Olawumi has mentored over 70 employees, 700 of entities across Nigeria with a revenue of over $20 million. 3 also serves a range of international and local businesses within Nigeria while partnering with international oil companies and independent oil marketing companies to foster growth and economic opportunities. Third, to join me on the panel is Jacob Uma. We like to say his nickname is Joby, And we like to say there's only one Joby in Kenya, and that's him. Joby has, and is the CEO, co-founder rather, and director of Hat Media Communications Limited. He's established this media company in 2009, and he oversees a client portfolio spanning diverse sectors, including energy, transportation, communications, technology, agriculture, name it. Joby earned a recognition as 40 Under 40 Africa winner in marketing and communications for 2024 in Kenya. By the way, I forgot to add that India was just named, and you wouldn't believe this, she was just named the African Women Chartered Accountant Entrepreneur of the Year in South Africa. The fourth person on the stage is Ilio Kumbi. Ilio is the Director, African International Finance Institutions at ExxonMobil Corporation in Mozambique. In his role, Ilio provides strategic advice to all business lines engaging in Africa, including low-carbon solutions, upstream and production solutions, and leads engagements with international finance institutions. I want to believe that the big question in your minds is, how did they do it? How did you build a successful electronic car company, Nadia?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. So I'm from Electric, like she has said. We have the highest number of electric vehicles fleet in South Africa. We also include charging infrastructure for our clients. And I think to your question about how did we build, it's really about firstly identifying the problem of your customer, right? So I think it was about going out and understanding what is the pain point of my client. The pain point of my client is rising fuel costs, which with electric mobility, they solve that. But secondly, my client has made commitments to go green, so they are worried about their carbon footprint. And so with one solution, they were able to do that. I think building is really about doing that, putting together something that somebody wants. There's always people who say, you know, I've got a great widget that I'm making, but what if nobody wants it? And now we understand that we are sitting in an industry in South Africa that is a $25 billion industry. And we've moved from a PowerPoint presentation to currently we're sitting at about a fleet of about 200 vehicles. And yeah, that's how we've been building, eating this elephant one bite at a time.
I'm going to talk to you later about elephants, but I'd like to quickly go to Wumi. How did you build your company to the stage it is now?
Thank you, Toyosi, and it's an honor to be here. We have a saying that success is when opportunities actually meet preparation. And a lot of us sometimes find ourselves in situations that are unpleasant, and we're at a loss on how to make the best of it. I started my company 10 years ago making lemonade out of lemons. And what started it was just the curiosity and the drive to add value to the downstream energy sector. But what has built it is the commitment to innovation, integrity, and excellence. And we have a success story where 2 a.m., about 2 years ago, I got a call and someone said, Wumi, our plant is down, we don't have diesel. Someone said I should call you. Wumi would make the impossible possible. It was a Sunday morning, and I appreciate that some of us don't work on Sundays. But when you know that hundreds and thousands of lives are tied to getting power for this particular company, then you just move whatever it is, even if it's a needle. And we did that, and that birthed as the beginning of a really great relationship with one of the biggest companies in Nigeria. So I would say what started it is not necessarily what built it, but that commitment to excellence and growth and opportunities is what got us where we are today.
You like to call yourself a trader. I know you called yourself a trader 10 years ago. Are you still a trader?
I will always be a trader. We're always trading, even our very lives, we're trading. Oh yeah, I want to do something for you. It's buying and selling. Ideas is about buying and selling. Services, products, whatever it is, that's the foundation. So yes, I'm a trader, a petty trader.
The only Joby in Kenya. You've built a really successful, what I'd call a media empire with your hands and businesses even outside of Kenya. I know that you lost your mom at a really young age, and your father had to leave the city to fend for you and your siblings, and it was just you and your brothers on your own trying to figure out life. How have you built that business to the point where if you're looking for the best media services, crisis management services in Kenya, and you're not talking to Joby, then you haven't started? How have you built your business to that point?
So, over 15 years ago, I was in the university, and I remember at that time, I got to represent my university and the country in an international pageant, which was Mr. and Miss University International. And I won. I was first runners-up in Korea. So when I went back, the degree I was doing was nursing and public health. But my passion was much into branding and comms because I got into doing commercials and film across the continent, still as a student. I remember during that time we used to be given student loans. I would take mine and invest in the Nairobi Securities Exchange, get returns, and use it to invest in other places. So I had tried out my hands, but I had a passion to build and to get something that will empower people. And apparently my degree in nursing and public health could not facilitate that, because if you're not a nurse, you're not a nurse. So I said I won't quit nursing. I'll pursue my passion, but still as a student. So I used to go for my lectures. If my lecturer is late by 10 minutes, you'll find me in the streets building this brand. And we started by t-shirt sales. We designed branded t-shirts, and we were selling to anyone and everyone. And I remember the proceeds that we would get with my brother back in 2008, we would take and started registering our company. You do an incorporation, get an incorporation certificate. Then we became a briefcase. And then we started walking and knocking the doors. I remember still as a student, I was a Nokia brand ambassador because of influence and all that. And the ideas that we gave them actually helped them to be the market leader, not only in Kenya, but they were leading globally. That time, Nokia was the in thing, And I was like, I can do this with my own brand. Instead of being where I wait to shoot commercials for big brands, I can conceptualize the commercials for those big brands. Instead of waiting for a communication campaign that I can plug in, why not be the one to curate it? 15 years down now, there is a coup d'etat in Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. The ECOWAS called me to ask me, how do we go about communication? If the government of Gambia is going through a crisis comms with their migration, the youth trying to cross over the ocean, I developed for them a migration communication strategy to help them mitigate that. In Somalia, the EU trying to handle the issues of piracy and maritime security, we provide them communication support. In Kenya, Meta facing litigation from the content moderators, we provide them crisis comm support for that. This is just on the continental scope.
So how did you get to that point where credible organizations, or how did you situate your organization in such a way that other credible organizations saw you as the main or premium provider for the service they were looking for?
I think there's nothing as amazing as a satisfied client referring you. For example, right now we are doing for the next 3 years a project with the NBA. And the project is funded by the AFD, which is the French Development Bank. But they were referred by the French embassy and the French government, whom we have supported to develop CAM strategies for other CSOs under them. So it's one satisfied client referring you to another, and also pitching and putting your arc out there. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm going to tweak that question a bit for you, Elio, because not everyone in this room is an entrepreneur. A few of us are leading organizations that we did not necessarily start ourselves, but we're managing it. And Elio is in that position. As a director for African and International Finance Institution at ExxonMobil Corporation, what have you done that has led to having a sterling career? What have you done that's led to you having a really great career?
Hello, yeah. So, great question. And thank you for saying that I have a great career. That's so I think that, you know, before going into ExxonMobil, I was an entrepreneur, and I consider myself a lifelong entrepreneur. And it's important to take those skills and that mindset of problem solving wherever you go. And even in large institutions like the one that I work for, I think very often you get caught up in the processes and procedures, but you need to be able to look at, like I think Ndia was saying, what are the pain points, right? And bring in your sort of unique set of expertise and skill sets to help develop that, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I have taken on in my career in order to be successful.
Thank you. The four of you have mentioned problem solving, being able to identify a challenge and providing solutions to that. However, there's a recent report by the African Union that said between 70 to 80% of African startups fail within the first 5 years. By year 10, that percentage moves to about 90%. Your businesses have survived for over a decade. What strategies and innovations have made you resilient? I'll go to you, Wumi.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, and I mentioned earlier about being intentional with growth. I'm a big believer in partnerships and collaboration. No man can move mountains. There's an African proverb, I believe it's African, I want to stay true to that. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together, right? I started out of my bedroom, making calls and just really doing everything solo. But I quickly learned that I was not going to scale, I was not going to have impact, I was not going to have the spread and the reach that I wanted by working in silo. So I got together with some of my mentors in the industry, and that speaks to you leveraging the resources that you have around you. I started to ask, how could you help me? How could I help you? What chain, what area can I plug into? What can I use this for? So I guess a lot of questioning and a lot of intentional growth is what really scaled the organization to where it is today. And like I mentioned, strategic partnerships really, because you can be different things to different people. So at different points in time, we're looking at our suppliers, our bankers, our customers, our stakeholders, the regulatory authorities, and you're making sure that you're speaking with the key people that can help you to advance whatever objectives that you're seeking. So really, just really knowing that those relationships, those stakeholders are key to the progress that the organization needs to make is what has led us to overcome whatever challenges and be relevant where we are today.
Thank you, Umi. You mentioned the power of collaboration and partnership. I bet there are people in this room who have had their fingers burnt by partners or people they've collaborated with. And I do not know if you all share the same idea with Wumi on this panel. I can see Joby smiling. How strong is the role of collaboration in the success of your business?
So the interesting story about my business is we run it as three brothers. And what you mentioned earlier actually helped because we lost our mother at a very tender age. Then our father had to work far away. So we raised each other up like we were each other's parents. And that's the only way we know how to do life, like being together and working together. And that's how we've run the company together for 15 years. But the first thing we had to do was to deal with the relationship issues because as you know, 80% of businesses fail because of relationship issues, not even capital. And we had to put our ego down, like, hey, we are here and this is a company, it's a business. What are your strengths? Stick in your strengths. What are your weaknesses? Stay away from those. We need you at your point of strength. When you come to the office, bring your A game. And no carrying any issues from home to the office. So those were the first things we had to lay. And we are very cautious with the people we collaborate with, you know, in terms of collaboration. Surviving 15 years is not easy, especially in Africa, where regimes usually determine the success of your business.
So have you dealt with the constant change of government?
The constant change of that, like I always say for us, growing and expanding beyond Kenya was necessitated by how hard it is to do business in one country. Because I remember even during COVID, you are trying to do your thing, then curfews are put in place. Then we were like, let's do stuff in Gambia, Somalia, so that if there's a curfew in Kenya, there's no curfew in Somalia. If anything is happening in Somalia, it does not affect Malawi. 1 month ago, we launched our office in Johannesburg just to meet our client needs and increase that resilience towards governance, changes in governance and government structures and taxation regimes across the continent. So it's usually a very hard balance to toss around. I invest in electric vehicles in Malawi. And how I got into that, it's because in Malawi, they don't have Forex. So they need EVs, but they don't have the dollars. We have the dollars in Kenya, so why not putting them into EVs and send them there? So it's using the challenges across the continent to solve the problems within that is making us grow and be resilient with the times.
Thank you, Joby. So when we mentioned collaboration, you mentioned expansion. Helio, what's made ExxonMobil Corporation resilient? You are over 2 decades old. What's the secret?
Yeah, so good question. I think that all of these things play a part in our success. I think our relationships where we work and have operations are paramount to that. You know, the governments where we work are our principal stakeholders. The communities where we work are our principal stakeholders. Making sure that we understand what the needs of our stakeholders are and working together to meet those joint objectives. You know, we have pivoted recently from an oil and gas company into an energy company and technology company, and so really leaning into our expertise to solve what are, you know, some of the world's biggest problems at the moment, and building up that capability within the company, right? So identifying where the gaps are and making sure that we have the right people doing the right things. And so I think over time, right, we get better and better at doing all of that. And that's how we become resilient. But you know, there are always issues, right? Issues always come up, and so I think it's important to make sure that you build in that flexibility to make sure that whenever something that is out of your plan happens, you're able to adapt.
Thank you. You make the point of adaptability. The fact that you started with one product doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're going to continue doing, particularly if the market is changing and the world is also moving with different trends. And so you are nimble enough to be able to recognize how the tide is changing and you adapt internally. India, you've done this for over a decade. What is the secret of Ever Electric?
You know, I just want to take also from what Helio was saying about adaptability. So when Ever Electric started, it wasn't called Ever Electric, right? And I think, you know, to share the story of when we initially thought about this business, we thought that we wanted to electrify the taxi industry in South Africa. So for those of you who've never been to South Africa, we've got 15-seater taxis, and they do a defined route every day, and so we thought that is ripe for electric mobility. But more research into that sector at that time made us realize that that industry was not ready. So we would not have been having the story of electric today if taxi didn't become electric. So adaptability is very important. But I think to your point about resilience, it's really about also silencing the voices outside that tell you that it's not possible. In South Africa, we are running electric vehicles. I mean, think about this, in a country with an energy crisis. So everybody we meet is like, what are you thinking? And I think at some point we asked ourselves, what are we thinking? But again, to that point, you put together a solution that solves the problem of your client so that the headache is not theirs, but can rather be yours. And that is what has really kept us going. We ran a 2-year proof of concept with some key clients in South Africa, DHL and DSV, with only 4 vehicles to understand the market, to understand the conditions of South Africa. And out of that, we understood what our client wants in real terms with the needs that they have. And that's what has kept us resilient, just answering to the needs of our client over and over again.
Just to chime on what she's saying about evolving, like when we started, we were just Ad Media Limited. 10 years ago, we rebranded to Ad Media Communication. And what led to that was with the regime changes, you find the budgetary spend of the private sector started shrinking. And we realized that we can no longer continue focusing on the private sector or government as our main clientele. And we started moving into the space of international organizations and international NGOs, which are more resilient and all have a story to tell. Because you find many organizations do impact on Africa, but they don't know who will tell that impact story, who will take that story to their stakeholders. So we spotted that opportunity and we have become masters in that space. So it's just about adapting to how the market dynamics change and evolving, you know.
Thank you very much, Joby. I'd like to take a detour to policy, just before we go on into your personal stories. For the past 3 days, we've heard all kinds of policies at this conference. In fact, I'm Nigerian, by the way. There are policies in Nigeria that I heard about for the first time at this conference. There are trade agreements I never knew existed until I got to this conference. So it is apparent that policy isn't so much a problem. It is apparent that trade agreements are not the problem. But for some reason, the people who should be the beneficiaries of all these agreements, policies, do not get the benefits of these policies. Is it an implementation problem? Is it a communication problem? What is it about governments and corporations churning out policies that the people cannot relate with? And so my question is, as I scan through this room, I see a few policymakers. What will be your feedback to the policymakers in this room when they are formulating policies? Because you're on ground, you interact with the end users, you interact with people who should be benefiting from these policies. In fact, yourselves, are major players in whatever policies in your industries. But what is your feedback to every policymaker in this room? And that question will be going to some members of this court. I'd like to go to you first, Fatou. Fatou is the director of PwC Senegal. In her role, she manages and formulates strategies for private businesses and, of course, governments in Senegal. What is your feedback to the policymakers in this room?
Thank you, Toyosi. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. So my feedback on the policy making is that what's difficult is the implementation. And usually also what I can face in Senegal is that when people are drafting those policies, it's maybe difficult for them to have the full picture, the precise understanding of how these policies will affect the business of companies. So usually, that's one of the most challenging things. Firstly is to draft policy that are, more efficient for private sector. The other one is to implement it in reality.
So what are the problems of implementation, Fatou?
Okay, so for the implementation, what we can face usually is that for big company or for public company, what's difficult is the human resources, because usually people do not have a deep understanding of what authorities are waiting for them. The other thing also is that the access of information, because usually those policies, maybe they are drafted correctly in some cases, but the thing is that you need to have maybe more documents that explain how to implement it, and the information is not available for everyone. So mainly, that's what I'm facing in Senegal regarding policies.
Thank you very much. I saw you nodding, Elio, because I know that is your forte. What's your feedback?
Yeah, so I agree with what Fatou was saying. I think that there are three key things to think about with policy, and especially policy in Africa, right? So the first is the information, which is key, right? So some of these policies don't actually end up getting to the people that it impacts the most and could potentially benefit the most, so that's important. The second is collaboration, right? And this is part of information as well. And so, sometimes you will have a government that puts together a policy for, name whatever energy sector, but then the immigration doesn't have the same policy. And so the people, specialists that we need to come into country to deliver some solutions that only they can deliver aren't able to. And then it seems as if this is a little bit disjointed. So collaboration within government to implement that. And third, I think, we are at a critical point in growth, especially on the continent. And we want to make sure that we are benefiting our stakeholders, so the African people, as much as possible. But we should also think about how competitive these policies are on a global scale, so we're not competing with ourselves, right? We're competing with the world. And so if you put policies in place that improve from what you did last year as a country, but across the world in Guyana, the policies are 10 years ahead, right? Especially for global countries, you have to look at your portfolio and decide where you're going to invest, right? And so it's about thinking beyond your borders when you start to put in practice these policies as well.
Thank you, Elio. I'll come back to your respective businesses. We have a saying in Nigeria that there's no business without finance. However, CBI Insight, in its latest research, states that a whopping 54% of startups in Africa were reported to have failed due to cash flow problems. Some may argue that finance shouldn't be the major problem of businesses. Some will say it's about ideas, some will say it's about understanding your niche market. Some would even argue that it's about communicating your service to the people who need it. When I look across this panel and across the whole court represented by this panel, it is apparent that you understand your niche. It is apparent that you can accurately talk about what you do. You've identified the challenges and you're providing solutions, but I'm really curious about this money question. How did you raise the funds to start your business? But more importantly, how were you able to scale up to the point where you are employing hundreds of people, you have sustainable businesses, and you're adding value to your communities? Do you want to go first, India?
Yeah, happy to. You can imagine, Toyosi, we have a very capital-intensive business, right? I think there's a few things that funders look for, right? It's that clarity in vision. It's about the market that you want to service. But it's also the capacity of the team on the ground. It's also your unique selling proposition. I think what I learned over time, having raised now 3 times, and having been a funder before, is that there are certain basic things that need to be in place.
What are they?
That before funders can fund you. I'll give you an example with Everelectric. The initial funding that we used in the business was seed funding, seeded by ourselves, right? Skin in the game. This is you sell a kidney or you mortgage your house, you steal or borrow or whatever, but you put together something to show your funder that you've got skin in the game. So they know all my savings are in there, I can't go anywhere. Then it's about finding the strategic partner. So it's not about just raising money for money. It's about getting that funder that can help you either with access to market or access to further funding. And while we were doing that, we were running the proof of concept that was proving that we've got the capacity. Remember, I spoke about capacity. We've got capacity to run 5 vehicles. That means we would have capacity to run 100, 200 and up. So I think it's not a matter of raising $1 billion on this first day. I think it's about building towards this business and actually demonstrating that you're trustworthy to carry the financing of, the additional amounts that you might require.
Thank you. Wumi likes to say that she's never raised external funding, and yet you run a successful business. How did you do that?
Well, that's interesting because I have never raised. I did start my business from years of savings. I think there's a lot that character and credibility plays in business. One of the things that we have learned while on this program is that people relate with human faces and not just your wallet. And when I was putting together my first business plan, anyway, it was to sell 500,000 liters of petroleum products monthly. And I said to myself, okay, I have saved X amount of money over the last 6 years. I'm going to start off with that. And if I made 50 kobo per liter every month, this is what I was going to have. And this was June 2014. And every month, I surpassed my goal. And every money that I have made, I retained in the business. And a company that could only afford to buy 100 or 200,000 liters when we started, we can buy 5 million liters today. By putting the money back into the business, by leveraging on our credibility with our partners, by being very strategic with market intelligence. There's a lot that what you have inside of you can also multiply for you. It's a multiplier effect. When you know the people that you're engaging with, when you know the market, when you have a knowledge of what's happening, there's a lot that can come to play. But I do realize that, yeah, if we need to, scale into Africa and we need to, spread our impact around the world, we need, funding and investment opportunities and things like that. But I would say that because we have now grown over the years, people know us and they come to us and they say, well, how can I help? How can I invest? What can I do? Can I put money in your business? And I'm like, okay, that's not a bad idea. And we can look at that. So I think we're in that place now where people understand that we do what we say we're doing, and they want to be a part of it. So yes.
Thank you, Umi. I'd like to go into the audience to speak to Segun Odunaya. I don't know if he's here. Segun runs one of the most successful solar energy companies in Nigeria. I know you've raised successfully over and over again. What are investors looking for when they go into a market? What has made you a successful business that attracts external funding?
Okay, thank you, Toyosi. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we successfully raised debts, both local and foreign debts. But I think one of the things, the first thing investors are looking for are the people behind the venture. You may have a great business idea if you do not have the credibility. And over the last couple of months and years, you will see how, especially perhaps in the tech space, how we've seen a lot of, issues, people raise money and then the money, diverted into something else. So the credibility, like some of you guys have mentioned, also your addressable market size. You don't want to invest in a market that is shrinking. How big is the market? How much of the money that you are being given, can be catalyzed to do much more. And I also think, depending on the kind of investors you're talking to, there are those who are just interested in making profit. There are those who are focused on impact. So you need to look for your goals and objectives must also match, what the investors. Because oftentimes, what happens is that, we as entrepreneurs, in the quest to raise money, we take funds from people we are not supposed to take money from at the wrong time. Some people raise equity too early. Some people, instead of raising seed capital, they go raise debt, and then that puts pressure on the business. But I think generally it starts with the credibility. It starts with having a market size that is growing, and that capital can then go ahead to multiply.
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor for questions, I have two questions. And that is, if you were to start your business now, what would you do differently? Before I go to the panel, I'd like to hear from Dash. Dash is a South African businessman who has his hands in so many businesses at the moment. He's investing in what I'll call electric batteries. Am I right, Dash? I know that you've also successfully bought small businesses and turned them around across sectors. If you were to start all over again, Dash, what would you do differently?
Don't buy distressed assets.
Did you say don't buy distressed assets?
Don't buy distressed assets. I think, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. We know it's the closing session, so we do appreciate the time. Again, just as context, I think my latest venture is extremely ambitious. It's a giga project. We're looking to set up Africa's first lithium-ion battery cell manufacturing facility. And as Ole has mentioned, we're looking at a market that is significant on the continent. There's no energy transition without energy storage. And we do believe that by unlocking the battery value chain, we are able to produce one of the lowest carbon footprint batteries if you have vertical integration from mining to processing and manufacturing on the African continent. To answer the question with regard to what I would do differently, and I think the panel has spoken to a lot of it, we've had the fortune of spending the last 2 weeks together, and the amount that we've learned from each other has been significant. We spoke about financing, and I think that's one of the major hurdles. The first business that I purchased, I was 24 years old, and again, it was also very capital intensive. It was a manufacturing plant, and essentially, in order to raise that capital, I had countless amounts of coffee, trying to convince people for the first 10 minutes of every conversation why they should give me or lend me money or invest in my idea. And I think that is the major thing. The panel has spoken to it, and it comes down to capacity, capability, and integrity. And I think that is the secret sauce. If you're able to do that and you're able to build this ecosystem of stakeholder relations and trust, you can be innovative in the way that you finance these things. For example, extending credit terms from your suppliers or trying to manage your cash conversion cycle, I think becomes important. But due diligence is very important, and I think that's what I would have done a lot more clearly, is make sure that there's a lot more due diligence done before you go into ventures.
Thank you. You're standing right in front of Ryan. Could you give him the microphone? Ryan is the co-founder of Reason 18, a mobile communication platform serving African markets. Ryan, what would you do differently if you were to start today?
Yeah, it's a good question. But what I would do differently is partner correctly early on. And I think the secret success in any business is the partnerships you have. And the better the partnerships, the more the success. And that counts for anywhere in the world. And that's the most scalable thing. And I think it's doing the right partnerships at the right time is extremely important. And then I would have risked a lot more earlier. I was thinking too small. I built a business of 400 employees and then exit that. But I should have thought a lot bigger and touching the end consumer way earlier. And I was maybe too scared at that stage.
Thank you, Rian. Joby, what would you have done differently? What would you do differently now?
That's a good question. Like, I look back into my life and I realize I have gone through the curve that I ought to have gone through, because I advise many business people, rather than rush towards capital, is build the internal discipline, learn the tenets of delayed gratification. Because, you know, many people start business and they want to start living large immediately. We have done 15 years of delayed gratification. So right now that we are expanding across Africa, now we can think in terms of capital. Otherwise, we have grown and raised all our funds through revenue and building our operational capital. Right now, if you see all the communication agencies in Africa, the biggest ones are all based in Europe, America, and then they expand into Africa. There is no agency in Africa that has grown within Africa from an African country, and we want to be the first one to do that.
Thank you very much, Joby. What would you do differently, India?
I wish I had started sooner. I agree with Rian. I think maybe there's people in the room who want to start and they're thinking, you know, should I start or shouldn't I? I wish I had just followed that lean startup method where you conceptualize something, you create a product, you go out to market and you see whether it works, and if not, you learn and you repeat the process again. But not all is lost. I suppose we are here now, but I really wish I had taken risks sooner. Yeah.
Ilya?
Yeah, I think really good advice has been given about this. I think that being patient is important. I think that you should focus on the right things. You know, one of the things that I think young entrepreneurs focus on is the number, right? So, you know, I want to be a millionaire or others. And I think you should really try to focus on, you know, what it is that you want to solve, the process, and the good habits, right? And be open to pivoting and switching, you know, what it is that your product actually is at the end of the day. Because if you have built these good habits and you have a good process, you will solve something that people need.
Thank you. Wumi, what would you do differently?
Well, for me, I think it would be being intentional with personal growth and just reskilling and retooling of my people. When we started, we were, you know, just there in the market, and we grew, and we made some mistakes along the line in terms of, you know, due diligence, like Desh had mentioned, you know, going into some transactions that turned, you know, bad. So I guess being intentional with due diligence, market information, knowing your customer, very important, and exposing myself to financial literacy, taxes. Yes, yeah, basically. Those are the things that I would do differently. However, I think that we make do with the best of the opportunities that we have at every particular material time. So.
Thank you very much. Final question from me before I go to the audience. So I'm sitting here. Imagine I have $1 billion. Amen to that. Just imagine I had $1 billion and I wanted to invest in your country. You're doing business. You have insider knowledge. There are people here who are curious to know about the business and investment climate in your countries. And I'm going to go to you first, Seppo. What should the people in this room know? So Seppo is the executive head business development at Telkom, one of the biggest telecommunication operations or businesses in South Africa. So I have $1 billion, Seppo. I'm bringing it into South Africa. What should I know about the business climate in your country? Insider knowledge that I cannot get on YouTube, that I cannot get on the internet, that only a South African living in South Africa, practicing in South Africa can reveal. What should I know?
All right. Thank you, Toyosi, and good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, I think in South Africa, therein lies a lot of opportunity. A rather well-developed country in terms of infrastructure, systems, especially our financial systems, our banking systems, very solid. It has actually shown resilience in the toughest of times. And when you bring your money into the country, taking it out is just as easy as anywhere in a well-developed country across the globe. So that's a very big plus. We have challenges, social challenges in the country. Like in many African countries, there are social challenges. And to you, that should be looked at as opportunities. We do have some challenges in energy sector. We do have some challenges in the education sector. But on the high end, we also have very good skilled workforce across industries, which are a big plus for any businesses wanting to set up in the country. Government has got a lot of incentives for foreign direct investments. And I think if you're setting up in South Africa, you can enjoy that. In different regions in the country, we have set up special economic zones, and especially manufacturing businesses do enjoy a lot of incentives if they set up there. And of course, we have a lot of affirmative action programs focusing on previously excluded part of the population, that is the black population of South Africa. So government has got intentional programs to try and address all of that. That has been extended to corporates, the big corporates like the one I'm working with, to say you too do play your part. And through your corporate social investments, corporate social responsibility programs, do invest in the previously disadvantaged individuals in the population. And so when you set up and partner with the locals there, one of the big things is actually considering previously disadvantaged individuals to be your partners there. You get to enjoy benefits when you do that. You get to be preferred when procurement opportunities come up. And any other challenge that you hear about the country, we have also a very good tax system. Tax, I know, is a very controversial one, but our systems are up to speed as far as that. There's a lot of incentives, tax incentives that are advanced to small businesses starting up in the country. So there's quite a lot of opportunities in the country, and I would encourage anyone to reach out if you're looking at such opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Seppo. Let's quickly go to Agang, who is a co-founder of the Clicking Generation in Botswana. If people are seeking to invest in Botswana, Agang, what is one thing, insider knowledge, you want to share with people in this room today?
Hello, everybody. My name is Akandi Tlhogo from Botswana, and our Chief Investment Officer, the President of Botswana, has been speaking at panels, so you know about the numbers, you know about the taxes and everything. But I really want to speak to the people of Botswana. The people of Botswana are really warm. The environment there, we are really small. There's a joke that goes, we have more cattle than people, and it is true. We speak mostly to the concept of Botho. Botho will translate to Ubuntu. We are a very warm-hearted nation which speaks to character and discipline, and you would have to be there to see it. But if you are coming to Botswana, I expect young people who are vibrant. I'm a techie, my background is in technology. We are passionate, and our government is facilitating such opportunities. Our president, the government, they're very intentional when it comes to the concept of digitizing and being very intentional about it. So do come to Botswana. And our tagline is Botswana, our pride, your destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bamidele Owola is the founder and CEO of Welcome to Africa International from Nigeria. Give us insider knowledge into the business environment in Nigeria. What should people in this room know if they're seeking to invest?
Okay, so I actually moved back from the UK as well, and I've been living in Abuja. I've been living in Abuja for about 5 years now. I would say there's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of positive energy. So, and that energy needs to be harnessed, okay? So I would come with the mindset of wanting to build people, because people genuinely want to be built. So that's something that I would want to put out there. Another thing about Nigeria that I've also seen as well is that there's so many opportunities. Like everywhere you look, there's an opportunity. And one of the things that even inspired me to start the company was that based on my time in the UK, when I got to Nigeria, every time I saw a challenge, I was also thinking about the opportunity around that challenge based on my time in the UK. So I think it's very, very possible. Everybody in my team, we're all Nigerians, we're all based in Nigeria, and we're doing stuff around the world simply because, you know, we take a lot of time to build people. So I think if you're looking to come to Nigeria and looking to do business in Nigeria, the people are there, the people have the energy. I think one just needs to spend more time thinking about building people. I think that would be it, yes.
Thank you. Tochukwu, just before I come very quickly to the panel, also from Nigeria, Tochukwu is the senior product owner. How was spent?
Well, for me, good afternoon all. For me, I believe it's very vital to understand context, geographical realities, and then the cultural nuances. You just don't take the policy documents you must have seen for face value. You have to do the homework, get your people in, and find a way to find the balance between the global technology or whatever thing you're bringing in, and finding a way to combine that with the local technology we have out there. Aside that, Nigeria have the numbers, and they have passionate people that are willing to work, that are coachable, and very diverse as well. So there's that need to do your proper SWOT analysis, consult the locals, and embrace the market as it comes. After that, you have to stay flexible and then keep pushing the drive. Nigeria is a welcoming country with a large market and has all it takes to at least be at the top of the map when it comes to market and whatever thing you want to do when it comes to international trade and technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the situation in Mozambique, Elio? If people are seeking to invest in Mozambique, what's your advice?
Yeah, so Mozambique, we have, is this on? Can you hear me? Yes, yeah. So Mozambique obviously has huge growth potential, right? So we have the largest proven reserve of gas that is undeveloped, and that's going to be transformational not only for the country, but for the region. We have 2,700 kilometers of pristine coastline, right, for tourism. We have over 5 million hectares of arable land. We have, you know, all the resources that you can name under the sun. You know, we are the largest producers of rubies at the moment as well. But I think the most important thing about Mozambique are the people, and especially the people in decision-making positions. So I'll be remiss not to shout out the executive board member of INP, so the energy regulator who's in the room now. And what you see is that we are open to making sure that the business environment is an agreeable one for all. And so getting to know the people, having conversations, and figuring out what needs to be done in order for you to make that investment.
I can't close this panel without asking about the investment climate in Kenya. What should investors or would-be investors in this room know about investing in Kenya?
Kenya is the African Silicon Valley. Like, if you want a population that is tech-savvy, you don't look past Kenya. Then we have a very stable electricity grid, because we moved from relying on hydroelectricity, and right now we are doing over 67% geothermal. Our 85% energy is renewable, and so you are sure you're going to have fast internet, stable grid, very savvy population, and it's the most thriving property industry right now on the continent. I mean, the return on investment is huge, and the Chinese are realizing that, and they're pumping in the billions, and the population can afford it too. We have the Nairobi Expressway, a project that we were honored as a company to handle the launch and communication and the support for it up to its uptake. And this is a project that The Chinese pumped in $500 million, put up a 28-kilometer expressway, and now they're making $500,000 per day as we speak with 95,000. So there's endless opportunity in infrastructure. The energy sector still has potential that people can thrive in, and the human resource. Right now, data labeling and annotation for all AI companies, talk of the Tesla, Louis Vuitton, Facebook, ChatGPT, TikTok, they are all done in Kenya. So welcome to Kenya.
Thank you very much. On this note, we'll take a few, we'll take a few questions from the audience. We're keen to end at exactly 3:15 p.m. There is a question at the back. Yes, sir, please.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Kalumbata, and I'm the founder of Awakening Hub. It's a startup that is based in Dallas, Texas. So basically what we do, we help entrepreneurs access funding. We work closely with the Small Business Administration, and we also help African government and the private sector access American investors. So my question to you, I know when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's mostly about the success and everything. But I don't know who's going to answer this question, but what would you do if you lose everything? What would you do to rebuild? Thank you.
So I'd like that to go to the member of the panel who's lost significantly, because I think that in these cases, experience is often the best teacher. So which of you wants to take that question?
I would like to take it because I found myself in that situation. In 2019, we had to close shop. We started working from home before COVID. Actually, COVID was our saving grace because by the time COVID hit, we were already 2 months working from home. And so we would tell clients, hey, we are working from home like everyone. And we were already hardened in working from home. And that time we had to close shop because the issue of tax. Because if for many SMEs, they don't understand that you need to have, your books have to be uptight, your corporate governance and compliance has to be up to date.
So how did you bounce back?
So how I bounced back first was to sort the compliance issues. And then we widened our scope because we said, hey, if it's becoming tough to do business in this country, we can as well offer our services elsewhere. And that is a privilege you have with the service industry, that it's mostly IP. You can start with the ideas that you have, put yourself out there, repackage yourself like we did, and countries, governments, companies believed in what we put out there, and that is what facilitated our way back up.
Shegun, how did you bounce back?
Yes.
Shegun, rather. How did Shegun how did you bounce back? So I'm going to rephrase that, because you asked the question. How did you bounce back?
I did not get to that situation yet, but
prepare.
Get a lot of entrepreneurs, like, who always, because we do host a monthly networking event here in Dallas, and then we get a lot of entrepreneurs who always come with struggles. I'm 32, but you see I lost most of my hair because it's stressful. Every day you have to find solutions on so many things, and yeah.
So I'll let Shegun share, because I know Shegun has a bounce back story. How did you bounce back?
I'm not so sure, but let me say this. I think in where I come from, there's an adage that says, if a child falls down, that child would stand up and continue the journey. But if an adult should fall down, when that adult is standing up, that adult will look back to see why he or she fell before continuing the journey. So I think the idea is to analyze what happened. There were companies that closed down during COVID. That was an external threat to their business. Is this something that you didn't do well, or the market was not just ripe? But I think, for me, it was maybe starting from nothing and growing, because we were kind of way ahead of the market. And most people educate the market, don't make money most times, because it's expensive to educate the market. But the only thing that went for me was that I was the only one in the business. So I was doing other things at the same time, trying to make money while staying afloat till when my industry just took off in Nigeria like maybe 6-7 years ago. But I've been in the industry like 7 or 8 years before that time. You know, but if I'd used the parameters of how startups should work, I should have closed way back.
Thank you, Shegun. Wumi, in 1 minute, before we go to the last question, you wanted to say something.
Oh yes, a righteous man falls 7 times and gets up 8. So with entrepreneurship, you have to know that it's not always a win-win. There are times you make significant losses, but you cut your losses and you move on. And know that you're not alone. You are a lion, and the fact that you go through a failure does not define you. Everything is still inside of you. Every resource that you used to build initially, you still have. So you go back to the basics.
Thank
and
you.
it's possible.
Toyosi, I would do a disservice.
We'll come back. We'll come back to you, Jacob, because I want to take that question.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I would say FAIL stands for fail attempt in learning, right? So, so just to speak to that, my question is for all of you successful people on the stage, and thank you so much for sharing your information with us today. For some of us that are still are working on going back, we're in the diaspora trying to go back home, my question is around the policy question that you asked earlier. How are you guys facilitating discussions back to the policymakers to correct and improve those policy communications or awareness so that people coming into the market can learn from what you guys have learned instead of repeating the same mistakes?
Thank you. Who wants to take that?
Okay.
Joby?
Yes, so if I can speak into that, I would do a disservice if I don't mention one thing we learned at Darden Business School that would help you, and it's called affordable loss. You have to advise entrepreneurs to take calculated risks and only incur affordable loss, because at times we burn the granary in the process of trying to be entrepreneurs. And it shouldn't be that way always. We can invest in knowledge, research, and get information before so that we know what is just enough for you to incur in that journey before you start it off. Now, towards policy, we help a lot of companies to handle government relations. And part of that is we handle advocacy issues, propose policy changes and adjustments to the legislatures so that the business environment for our clients or in the industries that we operate in are more plausible to the private sector. Because unless the private sector buys in, and that is the challenge we have as a country right now, you have technocrats formulating policy who have never done business and then only see the impact after they pass it in parliament into law. So we work backwards. We meet with these parliamentary committees and these political policy makers and the think tanks and educate them on the impact of the policies that they are proposing before it is enacted into law.
Thank you. So I'm going to give each of you one question, the last question, because we just have 2 minutes.
It's not actually a question, just a very quick contribution on the same issue of policy. I'm ambassador for Zambia to the USA, and actually run a business myself. It was very hard to leave my business to be ambassador. Policies are actually formulated by the private sector, ideally, in almost every government, through associations, and they contribute significantly towards policy. Government harmonizes, ensures they are aligned to bigger picture of the country, regulations, and other policies elsewhere. What happens, and this is what I've discovered, there are businesses that thrive on confusion. They make money from negligence, lack of proper policy framework. So the issue really is about how private sector coordinates itself to ensure that policy that they formulate benefit them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. On that note, we're going to close this session. I think that was such a good question to leave with the private sector in this room, and I wish we had more time. But I just want to thank you. In this room, we've been joined by the president of the Dallas Chamber of Commerce, Dale Petrosky, who had a board meeting this morning, but ensured he was here. We have Cynthia Wubani, who also ensured to come here after such a long day at work, and every other president ambassador, all our dignitaries in this room. Thank you for making the time to my panel. It's been a pleasure working with you. To our guests, thank you. And to the AV guys behind, who've made this really smooth. We really appreciate your artwork. On behalf of all of us at the Presidential Precinct, thank you and have a good afternoon.